I'd like to recap here for our audience. It is now 2:31 in the east, 11:30 on the west, and there is breaking news on this, what now is a very historic Sunday for our nation. President Biden today announcing that he will not seek re-election. Biden, the 46th president of the United States, made this announcement in a letter just released. The president writes, "It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president, and while it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and to focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term." President Biden did offer his full support for Vice President Kamala Harris to be the Democratic Party's nominee this year. The president says that he will address the nation later this week. Mr. Biden, the first president now since Lyndon Johnson in 1968 not to declare to seek a second term. The president is at his home in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware this weekend. He's recovering from COVID, and he returned there late Wednesday night from a campaign swing in California. I also have a statement here now from Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer that I would like to read to you. He writes, "Joe Biden has not only been a great president and a great legislative leader, but he is a truly amazing human being. His decision, of course, was not easy, but he once again put his country, his party, and our future first. Joe, today shows you are a true patriot and great American." Bringing in Nancy Cordes at the White House. Nancy, this statement from Senator Schumer, quite profound. It goes back to that personal sacrifice that we were speaking to earlier.
Right, and Joe Biden, if nothing else, has very, very deep roots in the Senate, and this was a very personally painful experience for many of these senators who served alongside Biden in the Senate, some of them for decades. This has been a really gut-wrenching experience for the entire Democratic Party, not only because it was difficult for them to see someone who they cared for quite a lot and who they felt had really had a very historic first term filled with a lot of successes, checking off many of the goals that he had set out for the first term of his presidency, but also this desire that many of them had from Chuck Schumer on down to make sure that this was a decision that President Biden could come to on his own. They wanted to show him that respect and enable this to be his decision and not to force him out. And so they proceeded slowly, especially the leadership. These members of Congress who had gotten to their positions of power just like he did through years of hard work and being with him in the trenches in those negotiations, they proceeded pretty slowly to try to send that message to him behind the scenes without coming out and calling on him to step down. They really wanted him to do this with dignity. And so, yes, there are a lot of members of Congress today who aren't proud that this is the way that things ended up. They believed in Joe Biden. They had hoped that he would be the nominee for another 4 years. This wasn't necessarily the outcome that anyone wished for or anticipated. But once it became clear to members of Congress all the way up to the upper echelons that it appeared that Joe Biden was going to struggle, not just over the next 4 months in this election, but potentially in the next 4 years, they also felt a duty to send him a very strong message. And so I think that, that letter that you read from Schumer is pretty indicative of how a number of members of Congress are feeling today.
Nancy Cordes, obviously, as you mentioned, that they wanted to show the utmost respect to the president and have him make the decision and do it on his terms. Let's go back to Willie James Inman, our CBS News correspondent, who is following the president in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. Willie, what do you have?
Very bitter in some ways.
Hey there, Christine. Well, we are in position here at the Rehoboth Beach Library. It's a spot that the president just doesn't stay far away from if he wants to make a statement, but no word yet in terms of if or when the president will come out and speak publicly. Of course, as you have been mentioning, as we've been talking about, the president is recovering from COVID-19. He is in isolation. And what a weekend to make this decision to, of course, be with his family. We knew that the First Lady has been with the president amid this COVID-19 diagnosis. Clearly, there was a conversation behind the scenes going on with not only the family, but amongst those close to President Biden. We knew from reporting that he has grown frustrated and, of course, being isolated in this situation amid these reports of Democrats coming out and saying that the president should step aside. But clearly, we would love to see and hear from the president today, but he came out with this statement on X, on Twitter, to say to the American people that he will not seek another term, but still behind closed doors here as he recovers from COVID.
Willie, I'd like to read another statement, a letter actually from the president regarding his endorsement of Vice President Kamala Harris. He writes, "My fellow Democrats, I've decided not to accept the nomination and to focus all my energies on my duties as president for the remainder of my term. My very first decision as the party nominee in 2020 was to pick Kamala Harris as my vice president, and it's been the best decision I've made. Today, I want to offer my full support and endorsement for Kamala to be the nominee of our party this year. Democrats, it's time to come together and beat Trump. Let's do this." Willie, are you hearing any word today of whether or not we will hear from the vice president?
Yeah, that's certainly an open question. I anticipate some type of statement coming from her to talk about this situation. But I also want to talk about what's going on out there in the American public. They're seeing this for the first time, of course, as we're getting it. Vice President Kamala Harris has been with the president since he decided to choose her as his running mate. And as Margaret Brennan pointed out on Face the Nation earlier today, this is about votes. And there have been a lot of black voters, I'm talking about black women in particular, who see Harris as the next party leader, who see Harris as someone who can carry the torch, that it's their turn to seek leadership in terms of leading the country. So Kamala Harris has a lot of fierce support within the black community. So does Joe Biden. But at the same time, Harris is someone who could potentially bring about that coalition. It's an open question as to whether or not she'll be able to be as powerful as President Biden was at the top of the ticket just several years ago. But clearly, this is something that we'll continue to watch, and we'll bring it to you first once we hear from the Vice President, Christine.
Some great points there, Willie. And on that note, I'd like to bring in now Ed Gordon, anchor at BET. He actually interviewed the president just this past week. Ed, your reaction here today on hearing this news?
Yeah, well, I can't say that I'm surprised, but it is an extraordinary place in history that this moment will take. I think when I sat with him on Tuesday, Christine, he had all intention to continue this fight and really believed, I think, that he was going to be the nominee and truly believed he was going to be able to defeat Donald Trump. So I think between this past Tuesday and the announcement today, he started to read the tea leaves. If nothing else, this man is political and understands there are certain points, political points, that you just can't walk away from. And with the idea of Nancy Pelosi not being full-throated in her support, even someone like Jim Clyburn, who was in fact full-throated, just listening to him during an interview today, you started to get the idea that this may be coming.
You certainly did. The drumbeat did get louder and louder since that debate with former President Trump. That is for certain. Ed, I'd like to get your take just on the gravity. I know we have a long road ahead of us. However, if the vice president is in fact endorsed and nominated as the new Democratic nominee at the Democratic National Convention, which will begin on August 19th, just a few weeks from now, the gravity of the fact that she is a woman and she is a black woman here in our nation's history.
Yeah. I think Ed O'Keefe hit it earlier when you spoke to him. We're in uncharted territories, Christine. I don't know that we know. Will America be ready for a black female? We'll see. People said that about Barack Obama. There were many who believed that at that point in time, America wouldn't be ready for an African-American president. and he was able to break a glass ceiling that many of us thought would never be broken. I think one of the things that we've got to be cognizant of, though, even with this endorsement, there are forces in the Democratic Party that do not want her leading that ticket. And we're about to see whether there's going to be some political wrangling around that, or whether they will walk in lockstep with the idea that this is, in fact, probably the easiest route for Democrats to follow, but more specifically to give Joe Biden the ability to say, this is who I am putting my belief behind. You should, in fact, do the same.
Well, he did put the word out that he is, in fact, endorsing his vice president. So I do wonder if that was meant for everyone in the Democratic Party to hopefully just fall in line. I know you are close to the vice president. You mentioned earlier that you said, is the nation ready to elect its first female black president? Is Kamala Harris, in your opinion, ready for the road ahead that's ahead of her?
Yeah, I think, and I'm bothered sometimes by that question. I think African Americans in these positions get that question far more than we give to others. I think, 3.5 years in the White House has certainly readied her more than any other person on the Democratic side. She is a bright woman. She's been in politics for a long time. She certainly, I believe, has the ambition now. She stood stalwart next to Joe Biden. But someone in her position would certainly, I think, rise to this occasion, and I think she's ready, able, and willing to say, I want to take this task on.
What are some of those personal qualities that you know about her that you feel will help in the road ahead?
Well, I think what we've seen her do at the outset when she was given the idea of handling reproductive rights, a lot of people have suggested, that she stumbled and failed on the border issue, but I think that that's one of those issues that everyone who's been front and center of that, and I'm talking about presidents who were seated in office, have had an opportunity to, use the bully pulpit, but haven't been able to get their arms around the best way to handle that. But she, as many people have suggested, found her footing around reproductive rights. She's a brilliant woman, a great orator, and the energy that she's going to bring to this, if in fact she becomes the nominee, is extraordinary. We've seen her in debates before. We've seen her during Senate hearings. She's quick on her feet. I think she'll be a formidable opponent.